everyone, and welcome to this presentation. My name is Ariela, I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm part of the team of Judaic Tourism, a social project carried out by members of local Jewish communities in Latin America, aiming at sharing Jewish life in the region, strengthening Jewish identity through the preservation of our rich heritage, and connecting Jewish travelers with Jewish life, history, and culture around the world. Today, I would like to share with you some general aspects of the history and present of the Jewish community in Latin America, focusing on some of the most outstanding events. The history of Latin American Jews, which spans more than 4 centuries, can be understood as a process of integration of new experiences, which has reinforced Jewish identity, fostering the cultural enrichment of the countries that have welcomed them. In the long and complex process of acculturation and integration, Jewish immigrants have absorbed the cultural patterns of the societies that they have integrated. Jewish presence in Latin America dates back to the 15th and 16th centuries, when Spain conquered and colonized the New World. Many Jews had to leave the Iberian Peninsula in 1492, and in spite of the existence of laws prohibiting Jews from settling in the Crown's domains, converts or new Christians arrived in these lands in order to escape the rigors of the Inquisition. Brazil was one of the first places where these new Christians arrived, escaping from Spain and Portugal. In the 17th century, the Dutch arrived northeast of Brazil and proclaimed Recife as its colony's capital, inviting the Dutch Jews to join due to their ease with the language and their business skills. That was how this Jewish population, together with the crypto-Jews of Pernambuco, founded the first Jewish community of the Americas and the Southern Hemisphere, the Kahal Sur Israel Synagogue, built in 1636. The period of Dutch occupation lasted about 25 years, and when the Dutch were expelled, most of the Jews living there either returned with them or they went to other cities, founding new communities such as New Amsterdam, today known as New York City, a community that started with Jews who came from Recife in Brazil. Very close in the Caribbean, the Mikveh Israel Emanuel Synagogue in Curaçao also bears testament to the long history of Judaism in the Americas. Built in 1730, it is the oldest continuously operating synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. Its most notable feature is the sand floor. While there are several different explanations for it, the sand is not a nod to the Caribbean location. The most common theory is that it was created to continue a tradition from Spain and Portugal, where, when Jews were prohibited from practicing their religion openly and met in private homes, sand was used to muffle the sound of worshippers. Other Jewish traces from that period in different countries of the region are the story of Luis de Torres, a Jew from Andalusia who was Christopher Columbus' interpreter on his first trip and who stepped on the island of Cuba in 1492. The story of Antonio de León Pinelo, member of a convert family from Portugal who, after being harassed by the Spanish Inquisition, settled in Lima, Peru in 1604. Even today, there are descendants of those first settlers of Jewish origin, mainly in the northern part of the Andes Mountains and part of the jungle, in places such as Iquitos or the Amazon. Another example shows a mixture of local language with Jewish culture. In Costa Rica, they use some expressions in Ladino. In the popular language, one of these expressions is descocherado, which refers to something that no longer works, that is no longer kosher, no longer valid. It's very difficult to know the number of Jews that lived in Latin America in colonial times. Unfortunately, the Inquisition also reached America, and in order to survive, some Jews were able to hide their identity and observe Judaism secretly, but many others had to convert or assimilate. Although the Jewish presence in Latin America was a constant since the conquest, Jewish immigration increased at the beginning of the 19th century. Many countries of the region started receiving Jews, escaping the hardships of their homelands and looking for a better future. With the decline of the Ottoman Empire, Sephardic Jews began to emigrate to Latin America in large numbers. Since the beginning of the 20th century, Jews from Syria, Turkey, and the Balkan countries dispersed throughout the continent, mainly in Mexico, Panama, Argentina, and Brazil, establishing community organizations based on ethnic affiliation. Meanwhile, Jews of Ashkenazi origin coming from Ukraine, Russia, Poland, and other parts of Europe also began to look at America as a peaceful and prosperous destination. Jews settled in various Latin American countries, attracted by the climate of independence and equality they offered and the possibility of finding better economic opportunities. Jewish immigrants consolidated their presence, organizing themselves into incipient communities without facing religious or political limitations as in the Old World, since here freedom of worship and thought extended to Jews as well as to other citizens. The largest migratory wave took place in Argentina between 1890 and 1940, when a large number of Jews came from Eastern Europe, settling in rural areas of the country. This was possible thanks to the support of the JCA, the Jewish Colonization Association, the philanthropic organization created by Baron Hirsch, aiming at facilitating the immigration of Jews from Europe, that laid the foundations of the agricultural colonization in the country, giving rise to the emergence of the mythical figure of the Jewish gaucho. The town of Moisesville, literally Moses' village, mother of all Jewish colonies in Argentina, had been founded, and soon after, synagogues, schools, cemeteries, Jewish libraries, and theaters were samples of a cultural splendor never seen before in those lands. The so-called Jerusalem of Argentina gave birth to great men and women who later became outstanding professionals in large cities in different corners of this country and the world, never forgetting that magical and unique village in north-central Argentina. Immigration started growing at the end of the 19th century and increased between 1901 and 1914, when Jews joined the great migratory waves to South America, finding refuge from the war and the constant anti-Semitic persecutions they suffered. Most of the communities followed the models of the congregations that predominated in their countries of origin. However, as immigration from Eastern Europe increased prior to the war, a radical change in community organizational patterns emerged. The new immigrants held different political ideologies, and many of them were secular. This gave rise to the creation of diverse organizations with motivations that were no longer specifically religious. Between 1906 and 1930, one of the most shocking criminal affairs in modern Jewish history took place in Buenos Aires, Argentina. A group of corrupted Jews established the Tzvi Migdal, a large, powerful prostitution cartel owned by Jewish immigrants from Poland. It was one of the largest networks in South America, with the main wing in Buenos Aires and branches in Rio de Janeiro, among other cities. At the peak of their activity, they had thousands of women working for them, some 2,000 brothels, and state-of-the-art organizational mechanism working efficiently according to mafia codes. Towards the end of the 1930s, Tzvi Migdal eventually ceased to exist. The trial ended in September 1930 with 108 convictions. The scars in the hearts and bodies of young women were, however, irrecoverable forever. Curiously, from the rise of the Nazi regime until the end of the war, when the need to emigrate from Europe was imperative, immigration decreased tragically. This was because some Latin American countries established economic and religious sanctions to limit the number of Jews settling there. Nazi propaganda fueled anti-Semitism already present in the region. governments were influenced by the radical nationalist ideas and the xenophobia, which resulted in most of the countries eventually having more and more restrictive immigration policies. During the 1930s and 1940s, Latin America became a perfect place for exiles from Europe to find shelter, but not only for Jews fleeing persecution during the war. Even if at first glance it seems that Latin America was protected from the devastating effects of the Second War, it had a distressing impact on the region. There was a strong connection between European fascism and various dictatorships that Latin America later experienced in Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil. Around 1960 in Argentina, Rabbi Marshall Mayer, an American conservative rabbi, set the basis of the conservative movement in the country, founding in 1962 the Latin American Rabbinical Seminary, serving conservative Jewish communities all over the region. Rabbi Mayer also became a recognized international human rights activist while living and working in Argentina during the period of the Dirty War in the 1970s.
Latin American Jews have shaped their community life with profound expressions of diversity, building their institutional profiles and their collective identity as part of a greater sense of peoplehood. The institutional models that Jewish immigrants brought from their homelands operated as criteria and organizational axes, while the Sephardic immigrants developed communities according to their subethnic affiliations, reflecting the complex character of each group. The Jews coming from Eastern Europe shaped the Kehilot. Since the 1960s, religious groups such as the Conservative Movement and Chabad Lubavitch have spread throughout the Latin American Jewish world. These movements have attempted to reshape the community map, seeking to recover the younger generations that were drifting away and to rechannel the religious expression of Jewish individuals. Since then, more than half of the synagogues in Argentina with a declining Orthodox style were transformed into conservative community centers in a complex process motivated by their need to survive and attract young generations. During the same period, the Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic movement expanded rapidly with a vast repercussion in its goal of motivating Jews to return to their Judaism.
During the post-war years, several countries allowed a greater number of Jews to legalize their citizenship. About 8,000 Shoah survivors arrived to Argentina in this period that also experienced a new wave of immigration to the continent. This time, it was Nazi fleeing Europe to avoid facing trial. Some of them, like Adolf Eichmann, were eventually caught by the Mossad or Nazi hunters. Anti-Semitic acts have continued and even grown worldwide. Terrorist attacks in Argentina against the Israeli embassy and the AMIA Federation, together with social, political, and economic issues in the region, have triggered a wave of Jewish immigration to Israel since the year 2000. Currently, the largest Jewish communities in Latin America are in Argentina and Brazil, countries that also have large German settlements. Since the 19th century, the propulsive energy of the Jewish communities in the region has been manifested in the vocation of coexistence of the Jewish people favoring dialogue as the natural result of a climate of tolerance and mutual respect. Out of the approximately 600,000 Jews that live in Latin America, 40% live in Argentina. This is about 250,000. 25% live in Brazil, about 120,000. Another 30% among Mexico, Uruguay, Chile, Venezuela, and Colombia, and the remaining 5% in other countries. Today, the Jewish communities in Latin America share common denominators, but at the same time, they conform different realities that depend both on their place of origin and the countries where they were established. They are mostly organized communities, relatively young, with less than 100 years of existence and located mainly in urban areas. These communities have a long history of vibrant Jewish life and culture, are very active in synagogues, Jewish day schools, federations, JCCs, youth movements, and many other organizations that you would expect to find in other world hubs of Judaism such as London or New York. Throughout the various Jewish communities, you've seen a variety in the customs and organization of Jewish life and identification with the Jewish world in the region. And with both opportunities and challenges ahead, as part of this big family that is the Jewish community, you are invited to continue expanding the intensity of Judaism no matter where you live in the world, engaging your heart and mind, unifying forces to strengthen Jewish communities, and promoting Jewish knowledge, identity, and peoplehood to ensure new generations. Hope you have enjoyed this little taste of Jewish Latin America.